Well, I was called embarrassing last night by someone who sits in his mother's basement just throwing comments around. Embarrassing because I'm still doing these videos. So, because of this, I've had enough of comments and I've closed them. Right now, if you're still with me, remember when you watch this video that we voted the Tories in with a majority. Listen to this. This is from PMQs yesterday.
The Prime Minister said in his speech on Monday, there's nothing progressive about robbing from our children. But isn't it inevitable that cuts in tax credits for working families, unless employers raise their wages immediately, mean children will be worse off?
Well, first of all, what I said in my speech about robbing from our children was the importance of getting our deficit down and not asking them to pay debts that we weren't prepared to deal with ourselves. Now, what we need to do is make sure we go on with a plan that's seeing 2.2 million more people in work. And crucially for children, compared with when I became Prime Minister, there are 390,000 fewer children in households where no one works. My programme for tackling poverty is to get more people in work, get them better paid and cut their taxes.
Well, I'm asking about robbing from children who are in families who are facing tax credit cuts. The IFS have said that cutting £5 billion from tax credits would mean working families losing, on average, £1,400 a year. Now, I know he doesn't have to budget, but many families do. Well, it's the truth. It's the truth. No, it's the truth. It's the truth. Think about, if honourable members would just for a moment think about a lone parent working part-time. To compensate her for that loss of £1,400 a year, the minimum wage would have to go up overnight by 25%. That's not going to happen, is it?
Prime Minister. The problem with what the Honourable Lady says is the last government didn't budget for the country. That is when she asked... Order! A period of calm must descend upon the House. The Prime Minister. Because the last government didn't budget for the country, as a result, the whole country was plunged into poverty, which is what we've been dealing with. Now, let me explain what we're going to do. For those who are out of work, we want to get them a job and a well-paid job. That's the best route out of poverty. For those in work, we want to see higher rates of pay, lower taxes. Our programme is simple. Let's have an economy with higher pay, lower taxes and lower welfare. What she seems to want is the current failure of low pay, high taxes and high welfare. That's what we need to move on from.
But you see, Mr. Speaker, you don't get higher pay by cutting tax credits. He seems to be saying that low-income families won't lose out because somehow on the day that he cuts tax credits, every employer in the country will rush to immediately put up pay. To compensate for the loss of tax credits, that would mean employers putting up pay overnight by twice what the OBR has said they're going to do over a full year. That's not going to happen, is it?
We are seeing rates of pay in our economy go up because we've got a strong and successful economy because of the decisions that we took. But what the Honourable Lady doesn't seem to understand is if you don't get people back to work and reduce welfare, you're going to have to make deep cuts in the NHS, which we don't want to see, or you're going to have to put up taxes, which we don't want to see. Now look, if the Labour Party wants to spend this 5 years arguing against any change in the welfare system, I say let them. You'll end up with the same result.
What he doesn't seem to understand is that these are people who are in work, who are going out to work, providing for themselves and their children. The truth is, the Prime Minister is going to cut tax credits. He's not going to make up for that loss by putting up the minimum wage overnight. Employers are not going to make up for that loss either. So millions of families with children are going to be worse off. He says he's tackling low pay. He's not. He's attacking the low paid so much much for the party of working people.
Cameron won't answer the question Harriet Paedophile Information Exchange Harman asks because he can't. He simply cannot admit that he is again hitting the poorest of our society the hardest. The rich will get richer and the poor will be allowed to breathe just under this Tory government. In Cameron's eyes and in the media's eyes, if Cameron doesn't admit it, then it simply isn't happening. That's why Cameron diverts his answers all the time. Cameron's argument that the employers will bridge the gap left by working tax credit, that employers will give everyone on working tax credit a pay rise, is utterly ridiculous, and he knows it. The only sector which rewards failure and which gives bonuses and pay rises left, right and centre regardless is the banking sector, who fund 50% of David Cameron's party. Remember, we still own about 80% of RBS, until of course George Osborne sells it off cheap to his friends, losing the taxpayer anything up to £20 billion. Well, last year RBS lost £3.5 billion, making £50 billion worth of losses over 7 years, but last year they still managed to pay £421 million in bonuses for failure. HSBC made £1 billion for every single month last year in what they say was a challenging year, because they normally make about 15 to 17 billion pounds a year. So whilst Cameron is forcing more and more people into poverty by removing their working tax credit to pay back money that has never, will never and does never exist, the bankers again get away with being rewarded for an abysmal performance. They're fraudulent, they're rate rigging, they're corrupt, and they literally get away with murder. Literally, in the case of HSBC, laundering drug money and supporting terrorists. Working poor set to face cuts in tax credits as David Cameron attacks merry-go-round welfare system. Tax credits for the working poor are set to fall victim of the government's pledge to wipe $12 billion from the welfare budget, after David Cameron insists Britain must stop the merry-go-round of handing benefits to those in work. The Prime Minister has attacked the system introduced by Tony Blair's Labour government, whereby low-paid workers pay their taxes but then receive the same amount and sometimes more back in welfare. George Osborne and the Work and Pensions Secretary, Ian Duncan Smith, confirmed yesterday they will set out in detail all the steps of how they will find $12 billion of cuts in the welfare budget in next month's budget and the spending review in the autumn. As I said at the beginning, we voted for this. We collectively voted for this nasty party, even though they wouldn't say where the $12 billion of welfare cuts were coming from. We still voted them in with a bloody majority. Yeah, I get the argument that only 36% of people who voted Tory, and that works out to about 24% of the electorate in total who voted Tory. But the fact is, more people wanted Cameron to slash the welfare state and to let the rich get richer and the poor get poorer than anything else that was on offer. The rich bloke at the end of my road voted Tory, and like me, he only has one vote. So who did vote for this? Rich people don't have 5 or 10 votes for everybody else's one vote. They have one vote, like me, like you. I wonder how many people who get working tax credits voted for the Tories. I know at least one person who did, who's now constantly moaning that they're going to be hit. DWP blocked release of figures on number of people dying after benefits stopped. A petition has been launched after the Department of Work and Pensions blocked the publication of statistics showing how many people have died within 6 weeks of having their benefits stopped. More than 18,000 people have signed the Change.org petition in under a week after the DWP appealed a decision to release the sensitive figures. Cameron and Ian Duncan Smith may as well come out and say that they want to put down, that they want to euthanise the poor for the greater good. Anyone who's been on benefits for, say, 5 years is to be bumped off so that schools can have free dinners for their children, how long before this seemingly ridiculous scenario is seriously suggested by the Tory party? But the sad thing is that Jeremy Kyle watchers amongst us, of whom this policy would be aimed at, would probably vote for it. They're that dumb. This government is utterly disgusting. Cameron doesn't care about you. But we gave him a mandate to destroy the country, and destroy the country he will do. 250 people protesting austerity in London at the weekend is nothing to him. For him to even look up from his coffee, we'll need at least 25 million people protesting this government. Are we going to get that level of participation? Not a chance in hell. We're just too comfortable at the moment, aren't we?